All right. First off, once again, I am severely under the weather, and it's been dogging me for some time, and I guess because of recent events over the past year, it's even more difficult to see my doctor. So it's taken a while to get the appointment, but it's coming up next week. So hopefully, and I've already had some tests done and stuff like that. So hopefully, we can crack the case on situation. I mean, but some days pretty good. Other days, Sunday was really bad, and today wasn't much better. But I hate for things to pile up. When I was feeling pretty good, I got in another episode of Doctor Who. So I'm going to go ahead and do this, but apologies in advance because I'm not at my best. And there's other videos I want to get through. And hopefully I can get to all of that as well. But basically, this is the Doctor Who episode that... and I don't know why I never thought of it. I mean, I always thought of it as a horror story, but I didn't think of it in connection because you look at Tom Baker's era where he had the Gothic horror era in his series. And then here in Peter Davison, this is the one that I think maybe you could others that you could classify that as well. A lot of people refer to Doctor Who in terms of horror, that always the hiding behind the sofa type thing. I was never particularly scared by Doctor Who. I mean, I was already too old at 12 or whatever when I started watching it and all that. But there's monsters and bad things and all this. This one is just the creepiness of it. And so basically you kind of have an exorcist type story, kinda, although pronounced kinda, which plays on of the companions, Tegan is the most depth, and I think, look, nothing against the other two actors, but I think Janet Fielding was just the more accomplished actress here. She had brought more depth to her character, and she performed very well. And in some ways, maybe it should have just been her and Peter, because later on he said, "Hey, it's too many companions and that sort of thing. Kind of, it's too much. You can't give them the time you need." And I think that does show, and ultimately their decision for Matthew Waterhouse's Adric character to leave. They tend to repeat things with him, and even in this show, he does the same move where you think, oh, he's playing along with the bad guys, thinking he's been taken in by them, and then which is what he did in State of Decay, and then here, and then Forward to Doomsday. No, he actually was thinking they had a good idea, and had to be set straight by the Doctor. Here, he does it, but it doesn't really go anywhere. It's just the scene gets repeated again. So it's kind of, I don't know. I think that's a bit of a flaw. And it starts out with simply enough that it's well, not exactly a space station in trouble, but it's a base in trouble, if you will, on this planet, and of course pretty obvious commentary on colonialism and whatnot. So these are the explorers that are observing this planet and thinking it might have potential to be a new colony. And of course they have no respect whatsoever for the natives. The natives are a bunch of mutes, apparently, although two wise women, or a wise woman and a girl, or they speak, and apparently the women do possess certain, or at least these women do. I mean, it's not quite clear. So there's other women in the group, but they didn't really do anything. But you basically have this, wise woman who's blind and stuff. So I don't know if her blindness meant she couldn't read minds as well as the girl who was her apprentice. Maybe, I don't know, because later on something happens that says, well, she does have it in some sense. But the people of the Kinder are telepathic amongst themselves, and they realize that. So there's some interest in that, and the Doctor tries to communicate with them, but he can't seem to get through, which is a bit odd considering there was this box they had, and once you open it, you can experience their beliefs, their times, their thoughts, and whatnot. but if you're a man, it drives you insane. And for the commander of the the explorers there, it does just that to him. Meanwhile, his second commander is completely nuts and regressing to his childhood, I guess. They've had other crew members who have disappeared before the doctor even arrived, so I'm assuming they, I don't know, got lost in the woods, saw that box, and went nuts. Who knows? And stuff like that. But I'm sorry, I'm all over the place because I'm just pretty bad here. But the doctor arrives. They left something of a cliffhanger in the previous episode, which was, I don't know, I guess they just did it because Nessa wasn't going to be able to be in the show. So she passes out, and they decide she just needs to rest up. So she stays in the TARDIS taking a nap while the rest of them go and explore the planet. They find these weird-looking chimes, and they think it's all interesting and whatnot. And then Adric and the doctor go off to get captured by the explorers. And Tegan falls asleep underneath the chimes. Well, that turns out to be a big mistake, because when that happens, your dreams expose you to other entities, and the Kinda tell the doctor about this later. And that's essentially what happens. So you have this combination of science fiction and old tribal myths and whatnot. And so this entity, who is basically the devil, the serpent in the grass, coming into the Garden of Eden there. Although a lot of times when you do these space exploration things, it's the explorers that are the serpents, But this entity known as the Mara comes into Tegan's mind to seek to take possession of her so that it can cross over into the real world. And so you have all this surrealism, and that's the more interesting aspects of the show. It's all very creepy and weird, and Tegan is lost and tormented. She doesn't quite know what's going on, and eventually the entity gets the drop on her, and where she asks for it to, and that's old stories of demons. If you invite them in, then they got you. And so this happens to her, and the mark of the Mara is this snake. Looks like a snake tattoo on you, but it literally is an entity of some sort. And so there she is. She's possessed by it. She confronts one of the members of the tribe, who's upset because two, or at least his brother and a friend, are captured by the explorers and held prisoner inside their little dome. And he's upset about it, but there's not much he can do. Well, the Mara takes him over with the promise that the Mara could get revenge and whatnot. So he becomes this new aggressive leader of the Kinda, even though the old wise woman says, "Oh no, he's the evil one," and all this stuff. And so there's not much else. He's just very violent and screams a lot. And the explorers had this sort of contraption they traveled around in. It was kind of silly, but they decided to build their own out of sticks. I didn't really see how that was going to work out. And they tried to attack the dome, but by that point, Adric is escaping, and he's in the robot thing, and the doctor gets him out and all that. Meanwhile, the second in command guy goes nuts, and I kind of wondered if, because he was able to, seemingly he was making contact with the two Kinda captives, and I guess the insinuation was that maybe they were manipulating him and whatnot. But at one point, he takes charge of them by showing them their reflection, which convinces them that he now has captured their souls, and so they obey him whatever he wants. Okay, but he gets more and more crazier as it goes, and nearly threatens to blow everything up and all this, and the doctor's got to outfox him. But his use of the mirror gives the doctor the idea of what to do about the Mara. And if the Mara sees itself in its reflection, it can't stand it. It wants to get away from it. They come up with these solar panels that surround it, and so the true entity is revealed. It leaves the Kinda tribesman, and it's a little snake in his hands. He's like, "Oh my God, snake!" And then it grows into a python, and then it's this giant inflatable snake. Now, the new effects, of course, are much better, where they CGI'd, for all intents and purposes, looks like a real snake, giant snake, captured in those mirrors. but as long as the mirrors kept it in there, it could only withstand the reflection of its own reflection so long, and then it dissipates and disappears. Well, of course, there's a scene where Tegan is all concerned about, oh my God, that thing was in me. And the doctor's like, yeah. And she says, it's gone now, right? And the doctor's too busy to deal with other stuff. So, of course, there will be a follow-up. But, and in that aspect, it plays pretty well at this sort of, alien demon type thing, of poor Tegan. And that's part of the story of poor Tegan. She stumbles into this adventure with the doctor, and then horrible things like this happen to her. And how was she to know, and it wasn't, and there's even a scene, which is kind of one of the failings, where Adric is losing his patience with everything because they're in such danger and whatnot, and he lashes out at Tegan that it's all her fault for falling asleep. The problem is I don't get where Adric knew exactly what had happened at that point, but so there's good and bad in it. Again, this is another one that's shot completely in studio, which for the most part works. There's a couple of scenes where you can tell, oh yeah, it's just a room where you can see the shadows of the trees on the wall and stuff. In some elements, it works to where the shadows look like, well, that's just more trees in a misty background, But in other areas, it doesn't. But the story works out. There's some, it's actually a pretty good performance by Peter Davison in here. And his back and forth with the old wise woman and the apprentice girl. And then that's the instant she depends on the girl for her telepathic abilities and reading other people's minds and whatnot, which seems like she can't do it herself. And yet, at the moment of her death, she, telepathically transmits her entire essence and knowledge to the young girl. So the young girl now becomes the new wise woman of the tribe, But the idea of men going mad if they look into that box, there's a female scientist at the time, she looks into it, and she, and she still doesn't understand quite what's going on. The doctor has to tell them, but the doctor looked into the box and it doesn't drive him mad. So then the old wise woman said, oh, well, you must be an idiot. Well, sometimes. But of course, it's because he's a Time Lord. Now today they would say, oh, look, that's proof that the doctor was originally a woman, see? But he wasn't at the time he looked at, Meanwhile, the first officer or whatever, who was going crazy, he looks into the box and, well, now he's pretty much normal. So, hey, makes sense. So, inadvertently cured him of his affliction, so. It's not a great episode, but it has some cool aspects to it, and it's an interesting take with horror, in that the horror of being possessed and demons and all that. It goes back centuries of a fear of that sort of thing, and so in that aspect, it works very well. And especially, in a lot of ways, Tegan kind of saves the show here, even though it's only one element of it, but still makes up for a future episode, which will deal with the menace of the Mara again. Thanks for watching and listening. Say, while you're still here, why not like and subscribe and share with your many friends? Yes. Also, check out my mini stores in the link description below. Yes, where you can get t-shirts, hats, mugs, all those goodies with my artwork on them. Oh, yeah. And head over to indieplanet.com and pick up a copy of my comic book, Night Night. Oh, yeah. You can also catch me at my podcast, Mr Nailsin Show, on RadioMisfits.com. And you can also watch my videos on BitChute.com and now on Rumble.com. Oh, my goodness, so many places to watch me and my stuff. Oh, yeah. And if that's not enough for you, well, you can follow me on many social media platforms and say hi to your old pal, Mr. Nailsin.